Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.
Dodge this.
Oh, people, I am so excited for this episode of the Holy Moment Podcast. Man, it's a podcast. We talk about crazy things, blah, 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 blah. Who cares? Because today, we are talking about one of my favorite movies of all time. We were talking about motherfrickin' R, capital R, capital R. That's right, triple R, baby. I am Nathaniel John Lirio. I am your host today. I am an editor. I do things. But most importantly, I am a man that was blessed by watching this movie. I went in blind last year. I knew nothing about it. And it blew me away. And I got to spread the good news of RRR to my dear friend Jeffrey. Jeffrey, introduce yourself.
The good news has been spread. I am Jeffrey Nichols. I am an actor, a director of short films, and I have been converted. Right? I was not a believer. I was a skeptic coming into this. I was like, RRR. Like, what a dumb name. Right? What could this possibly mean for me? Right? I'm not an Indian man. What relevance could this... Hold on, I think I'm entering problematic territory.
Wait a minute. No, you're not, because Jeffrey, fans at home, Jeffrey is in fact a Native American Indian man. Are you not, Jeffrey?
Okay, so that is true. I'm 1/16 Choctaw. Of course, that's American Indian. Yeah, I guess maybe that does give me authority to speak on this film. Yeah, these are my people.
That's crazy and beautiful. Did you feel connected to your people during this movie?
I did. It's a story of brotherhood, right? And that was one that touched me at my core. Because I like to think of us as brothers, right? Brothers in film, brothers in Christ, brothers in...
Having sexy, sexy bodies.
Yeah.
Truly brothers. But yeah, we watched this movie called RRR, and if you couldn't tell by us making, hopefully, not racial comments, we would never want to do that. It's a Bollywood movie. Guys, Americans are sleeping on Bollywood movies. I've only seen two, but the two I've seen have been straight gas. And I don't ever say that because I feel like that's what kids say, and I don't know what that means, but it's gas. We watched PK in college for one of our classes. Awesome movie. And then again, I watched RRR just off the recommendation of a friend, and both phenomenal. I mean, I'm really excited to get into that in the podcast. Just our preconceived notions of like what Bollywood movies are like, and also what they actually are. Granted, it's coming off of only two Bollywood movies and two great ones. But all that being said, let's give a little bit of background so people know what we're talking about. Sometimes we kind of gloss over this, but this movie and how it got made and the kind of the pop cultural significance is a big deal. So I don't want to race on through it. So the movie today, RRR. Also, guys, as you all know, very bad with the names. I struggle with white people names, like Rebecca. So these are all very, very Indian names. I'm going to say all of them horribly, and you're going to have to be okay with that, or you can click away, but don't do it. Okay, our director is S.S. Rajamouli. Rajamouli? Raj. His name is Raj. And his father actually had the original concept and kind of made the original treatment for the script. And then his son, took it and wrote it into the screenplay. So I think that's kind of cool. It was released on March 1st of 2022. So it came out not too long ago. It's a newer movie. The studio was DVV Entertainment, which is a really big studio in India. So the director has done some other bigger movies in Bollywood history. The Babali, the beginning, and Bahubali, the conclusion. Again, terrible pronunciation, but bear with me. The budget was $72 million, and the box office, it made $166 million. So it did pretty well for itself. Kind of doubled its money. The cast, so it had a star-studded cast. Our two leads, really, there's some good supporting characters, but we're here for the bromance, 100%. And our two leads are Rama Rao Jr., who played Bahim, and then Ram, who played Raju. And then kind of supporting leads was Ray Stevenson, who played Governor Buxton, and then his wife, who was played by Alison Doody, Catherine Buxton, and then the love interest, Olivia Morris, played Jenny. So where I really want to talk about the background for this movie is what it did at the Oscars. So this movie was nominated for Best Original Song, Natu Natu, which was the wedding scene song, and it won. making this the first Indian and Asian film to win this category, and it's the first Telugu film to win or to get this nomination in general. So it was actually a really big deal that this song that this won this category at the Oscars, and it really opened up a lot of doors. You remember back in, I don't know, what, 2019, when Parasite won, I think, Best Picture, and it was a really big deal. It was the first like Korean movie that won Best Picture. Kind of the same idea. So it's really cool to see these different cultures and movies breaking into Western films and being so big here in America, like in theaters and whatnot. What were you going to say, Jeffrey?
No, I was agreeing with you, but also, speaking of it being the first Telugu song to have won Best Original Song at the Oscars, this might betray our ignorance, but both of us watched this movie with the dubbed Hindi, thinking that it was the original. And so we had to do some learning there. I'd love to see the movie again in the original Telugu, but yeah, like I know Nathaniel texted me saying, "Hey, like whatever you do, don't watch it in the dub, or else I'll kill myself." Right? And of course, he was talking about the English dub. I was like, "Okay, I won't. I swear." Right? I'm watching the Hindi version, and as I'm paying attention to the movie, I'm noticing, wait a minute, these lip flaps.
It's lip flaps.
In spite of all of my effort, am I still watching a dub?
Well, you are 100% correct. I was ignorant when I sent that text, and then we looked it up, and surprisingly on Netflix, you can't stream it with the original Telugu. How do you pronounce it?
Telugu.
Telugu. You cannot stream it with the original Telugu dub or the original
So what that means
voiceover
is Nathaniel's going to have to commit suicide in this episode of the Holy Moment podcast.
Okay, if we're holding each other to our promises, Jeffrey, you should be a mass murderer by now. You were supposed to let off an atomic bomb in Cleveland, Tennessee, since what's-his-face didn't send us an email this week. So I don't want to be held accountable for no seppuku if you're not committing mass genocide for your promises. But it is true. I did not realize I was watching a dub because I just assumed it was the Hindi version. But I will say the main actors, the ones who could speak the language, Rama and Ram, actually did like the dub in 3 different languages. So they did it in the original Telugu and Hindi, and I think another Indian-based language. So it is still, in fact, their voices, but it is being voiced over dub flaps. It's not like the original, what they said on set, unfortunately.
Well, that's really good because I remember watching the movie and thinking, man, for a dub, the acting is really on point, right? Specifically for them, it's like it feels like those characters. And to hear that it was coming from that actor, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it would be really impressive if it was if it was different actors. I would have been like, wow, that was phenomenal. But yeah, it was in fact their voices just in a different language. But a little more background on this movie, because again, it's not like a heavy contextual movie. It's not like there's a bunch of lore and history you need to know. It's just such a freaking epic. It's an epic of a movie. So I want to give you guys as much grounding as you can. So as we get into the meat and potatoes, you know what we're talking about. So first off, this movie is based on 2 real Indian revolutionaries, Raj and Bahim, who fought the British Empire from 1858 to 1947. They didn't fight them that whole period because that's like 100 years. But during the British Empire rule in India is kind of when those 2 real historical figures lived. So the movie is the idea of what if these 2 met and the origin story of how they joined hands and then start a full-on revolution. Because in real life history, the 2 really never crossed paths. But the director, when he read the story, was like, man, these 2 guys are kind of badasses. What if they met up and then the revolution was fully successful? So that's kind of the basis of this movie. Another thing I want to clear up, because I myself have seen this movie like 5 times, and I didn't actually know the meaning of RRR until today when I did some research. And I'm sure everyone at home is like, why the frick is called RRR? And it's actually kind of funny. So RRR officially stands for Rise, Roar, Revolt, for the idea of, overthrowing the British Empire, revolutionaries. Makes sense. You want to know what it originally stood for, Jeffrey?
What?
It originally is just the initials of the director and the 2 lead actors. Rajamouli, Ram, and Rama. It's just their first letters of each name. And it actually worked out really well because they wanted a simple name. Because I think the idea, they wanted to make this a really big blockbuster success, like worldwide. So they wanted a simple name that everyone could latch onto. They didn't want it to be a complex Indian name that not like people in the Western world would understand. So like RR, very simple. But they also wanted to have some context to marketing in India. And like I said, the two main lead actors are like, they're like the Tom Cruise of the Western world. They're huge. Everyone there knows them. So kind of doing this double play on like, oh, RRR, Rise, Roar, Revolt, but also it's like kind of the names of these super famous people. You can market it in both hemispheres and it worked well. So that was interesting learning.
I love that. I love that the name of the movie is essentially directed by Steven Spielberg, starring Tom Cruise and Matt Damon, you know?
Yeah. It's like if you and I made a movie and it was just NJ or
Yeah.
JN. It could be JN, could be Jeffrey First.
Yeah, JN is actually just my, those are my initials, Jeffrey Nichols. So like,
It could be that's very fair. Yeah, Jeffrey Nichols. I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to say before, like kind of the context before we jumped in, other than, this was my movie for dealer's choice. So the category was just, I get to pick whatever movie I wanted to. And I really toured around picking a movie that I hadn't seen before, going in completely blind. But RRR was just, it was too good. It was too good, guys. It was, I don't want to say by far my favorite movie I watched last year because Godzilla Minus One was last year, but it was definitely my favorite movie I watched last year. Guys, it's a 3-hour and like 20-minute movie. I watched it 3 times, I think, in the span of a week and a half. I watched it like back to back, like one night and then the next night. And anyone and their mother who would listen to me, I tried to get it to watch. We tried to get all of like my fiance's family to watch. I tried to get my family to watch, but my family sucks and doesn't watch movies, so they didn't do it. Her family's great. They watched it. They loved it. Huzzah. But it's just a movie that I fell in love with. And when we get to my holy moment later, I can really expand upon why I thought this movie was so great. And also, I really did want to highlight a Bollywood movie, something outside of the Western culture films. And I think for Jeffrey and I, who grew up watching anime and who love anime, I think we're very often going to pick, a Kurosawa film, something Asian related, an anime film, a Studio Ghibli film. But, there's a lot of good movies out, like German films, Indian films. There's a lot of films out there that aren't just Asian or Western civilization. So I wanted to give us a chance to open up that door and see if you guys, the audience, liked it. I want to enlighten you guys, bring you into the beautiful light known as RRR and their big rippling muscles. You know how JoJo's the anime gets the joke for being like the straightest gay anime out there?
yeah.
I feel like RRR could be that. It's like the straightest gay live action thing I've ever seen. And it's awesome.
100%. 100%.
Oh, well, without further ado, guys, otherwise I'm just going to sit here and just like praise the loving crap out of this movie forever. I'm going to go ahead and read us the first act and we can jump into RRR. Set in 1920s British occupied India, the film opens with the brutal abduction of a young tribal girl, Molly, by the British governor and his wife, entering Bahim, a protector from the Gandhi tribe who vows to rescue her. Meanwhile, we meet Raju, a fierce and relentless Indian officer working for the British with a mysterious personal agenda. Neither man knows the true identity. Bahim disguises himself as a Muslim mechanic in Delhi to search for Mali. Raju, tasked with stopping the rumored tribal uprising, seeks to uncover the identity of this unknown threat, Bahim. A fateful, over-the-top rescue of a boy from a train accident forges a powerful friendship between them, all while hiding their opposing missions. Their bond grows through song, laughter, and a shared sense of justice, until cracks begin to form, hinting at the inevitable confrontation. Dun dun dun, the first act of the movie, or just the first hour, which is crazy. So much happens in that first hour. So, Jeffrey, for just like a crazy Bollywood movie known for their bombastic action, their over-the-top acting, the crazy cinematography, set pieces, so over the top. Kind of my first question coming into it, like, when did you catch on to like, since you said you've only watched one other Bollywood movie as well, and PK is not an action film. It's more of like a drama. So there's not a lot of action in it. This movie, all action. When did it kind of dawn on you what you were watching? When did you kind of realize, like, when did you get a feel for the land of like, I see what's going on here?
I would say, all right. So that scene near the beginning where Raju is told to arrest a man who threw something at a British officer, and he overcomes incredible odds to reach this one man and subdue him. I think that gave me a taste of what to expect as far as how incredibly over the top the action was, And I say that not as a dig, but as a great compliment, right? Because it was so engaging, right? And so enthralling to see this man push, pull, tug through these throngs of people, right? It's just every which way, their bodies, right? But he digs through them and he finally catches his target. And just the sheer determination that tells us everything that we need to know about that character.
Audiences at home, let me paint a picture for this scene if you're not familiar with Bollywood movies. They're like in the middle of a desert and they're at like a police station that has a little bit of fence of barbed wire. And there's like 20 police officers. They're surrounded by hundreds, if not thousands, of pissed off Indians. And one of these Indians throws a rock and it crashes through a window of the police station. And the white police commander tells them, go capture that man. He's behind hundreds, again, if not thousands of pissed off Indians. And this one Indian police officer, Raju, jumps over the barbed wire fence and fights off a horde of people. It was literally like the last scene in The Matrix where Neo fights like a million Smiths. He is fighting hundreds, if not thousands of people at the same time. And it's just so over the top and incredible. I loved it. And it's funny that you say that, Jeffrey, because I feel stupid. That scene should have queued me up to what we were doing, but for some reason it didn't. I didn't get the over the topness of the movie until the end of the first act, where we have him rescuing the boy off of the train, and then they walk underwater in slow motion and grasp hands. That's when it finally dawned on me. I'm like, oh, I get the vibe we're going for. So I'm proud of you for catching on a lot sooner than I did.
Okay, so that clued me in, right? That was my first subtle hint. But that moment at the bridge, I think that was the tipping point, right? When the two the destined friends, brothers, lovers, catch eyes and wordlessly communicate. It's such a complicated maneuver.
It's so complicated.
To save this kid. I don't know, it's just eye contact and a hand gesture. And immediately he knows to hop onto that motorcycle and grab, cloth and.
You 100% they could communicate. So I've watched this movie a few times. So some of the craziness has worn off on me, but that scene in particular is probably the scene that landed the hardest yet again. It's just Raju is on top of a bridge pretty far away, and he just sees Bahim on the bottom of the bridge. And basically this train is derailed and has started an oil fire around this kid on the lake. And they just have eye contact. And yeah, like Jeffrey just said, they communicate this crazy complicated plan just by looking at each other. And guys, I cannot stress it enough. If you don't go watch the movie, shame on you. Go to YouTube and just look up train scene RRR and your life will be better. I'm talking to my brother right now, Nicholas Lirio, who I know is watching this. I know you're not going to sit your butt down and watch a 3-hour long movie because you don't like movies, but just type in RRR train scene and your life will be better. So sorry, not to jump too far because I know that's kind of the end of the scene, but I just wanted to open up with that. Jeffrey, with your history only seeing one kind of Bollywood movie, did it prepare you for this movie, or do you feel like this one was completely different and just culturally, their way of filmmaking compared to our way of filmmaking is very different, not for better or for worse, just different approaches. Were you prepared for how over the top the action was going to be?
I think that PK did do a good job of prepping me for what to expect from a Bollywood film generally. And then I think I'd seen clips from other Bollywood films that had prepped me for the rest. Something interesting I noticed between the both of them is that they were both pseudo-musicals, right? There were random musical numbers that they would just burst into. And I'm not sure if this is something that typically happens in most Bollywood movies, if they just enjoy using music in this way, or if we just happened upon Bollywood movies that were also musicals. But I thought that was super interesting.
Yeah, it was really cool just how integral the music was. I mean, this won an Oscar for the music, and in my opinion, not even my favorite song. Honestly, one of my least favorite songs in the movie, and it was still a phenomenal song. But I loved how unique the sound was in this. I had never, ever, ever heard anything even remotely close to this soundtrack. Even the opening title credits, which are just a black screen with title credits coming on, you get like a tiger growling with people chanting. It's just like a guttural noise. It was so cool. And they also did a really good job. And I might get to this a little bit later because this is a pretty big point to the movie. They do a great job with motifs. Motifs, for those of you at home, are a song attributed to a location, to a person, to a story bit, and they're repeated. And not only they're repeated, they're changed. So you can have a motif sounds a little more hopeful for a main character, but when a main character is going through like the shadow of the valley of death, you can change the motif to be depressing. You can change the motif to be creepy. So it always has that underlining idea of like, oh, this is the character's song, but just as the character be going through different things, the song can transform as well. So that being said, I haven't seen a movie that does such a good job with motifs in such a long time. Specifically, I loved Raj's motif. I think it's titled Volcano in the soundtrack. Just so badass, guys. Go listen. Like I don't listen to soundtracks ever. Very rarely do I finish a movie. And if I do, it's usually anime and then I go listen to it. This is one of the soundtracks when I'm working and editing, I will just play on repeat. It's so good. All that being said, dang, I want to keep just asking you questions, but I feel like I have to describe the scenes because when you watch an action movie, not even like, I'm going to say an action movie, not like a drama, you have set pieces. And again, a little bit of definition. A set piece is just a really big scene that is kind of like the money maker. It's kind of where all the money goes. It's where the big set goes. If it's an action, it's where the explosions are. You know, think of any movie like Jurassic Park. It's where the T-Rex is chasing them in the Jeep. It's the really big climactic scenes that cost a lot to pull off. You know, you got like usually one per act. You know, maybe it's a smaller movie, maybe just two. This movie was just set piece after set piece after set piece. So I want to ask you questions, but I want to like describe the set pieces because they were so sick. All that to be said. Which one did you enjoy? Which introduction did you enjoy more? Bahim's or Raju's, the scene, the set pieces? And why? Because I feel like they introduced these characters in similar ways, but with different dynamics. So which introduction do you like more?
Raju's, I think.
It's the correct answer. It just is. Sorry, continue.
It's not even close. I think Bahim's was really cool, right? But Raju's was on just a different plane, right? The sheer determination, something I noticed about these movies, specifically about RRR, is this takes place in an alternate reality, right? But it's not an alternate reality it's more or less, it takes place on Earth. And it's not a magical form of Earth, it's just Earth. And yet they're still able to perform superhuman feats from willpower alone. And that I just thought was badass.
It was so cool. A big theme that I really want to get into is their ability to do these crazy action scenes. Like, you know, it's just not possible in real life. It's not possible to jump off a bridge either way with this rope and then grab this boy from an oil tanker explosion and throw him to the other guy, only to wrap yourself in a wet towel so you don't get caught on fire. It just, you know, things that just cannot be done. Like, hypothetically, maybe, but no, just period can't be done. But they pull it off in such a crazy, silly way that is still grounded. So a really big question, Jeffrey. There's so many set pieces. There's so many bits of acting. Would you define the big over-the-top action bits as goofy? And if you do or don't, do you feel like it undercut any of the emotional scenes? Because as crazy as the action is, they really hit home with some of the acting and some of the emotional story beats. Yeah, go for it.
I think that the action, it was over the top, right? But it was so well choreographed, and the actors did it with such earnestness. There wasn't any winking and nudging the audience. There wasn't an ironic bone in this movie. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, that's so... Yeah, I never even thought of it that way.
And I think that the fact that they were playing these crazy action set pieces with such sincerity, yeah, it was kind of goofy, but I was fully invested and I was grinning ear to ear and enjoying every moment of it, right? It's like, I was thinking, oh, this is so cool. This is so badass. Like, who cares if this is possible or not, right? He just ripped what is it? It looks like a manhole, but
Oh, a steel grate.
a steel grate from the ground, straight from the ground. And it was just willpower, right?
Yeah. I'm really happy I never even thought about it that way, but because it's kind of going into my holy moment, but just the duality they can play with this over the top, crazy anime like action, but grounding it in seriousness. And it's because you're right. They don't make light of the situation. It's tricky. It's a tricky conversation because the action, some action scenes are really, really hard. Like there's like a torture scene and they don't play that for kicks and giggles at all. But like the scene we just explained with like the kid and the boat and the train and the explosion, they save the kid. They don't nudge to the audience like this isn't serious, haha, laugh. But in World, the characters take it somewhat lightheartedly. Like they have fun with it. It doesn't feel like it. So it's not necessarily that the movie isn't having fun with the action because it is, but it's not telling the audience that these characters don't care. And I think you said it best, Jeffrey, just the idea of like these characters are doing everything so earnestly. So whether it is a simple fist to fist fight or whether it is Behemoth in the third act literally twirling a motorcycle like it's a stick, it doesn't feel silly or goofy. It feels like the characters are doing their best and hardest to fight against the evil British Empire, and that just grounds it all together somehow. It just is a beautiful, beautiful mixture of music and crazy action and beautiful acting and moments that will make you cry that you didn't even know were coming. And they walk that tightrope like it was 12 feet wide. Beautifully done. Sorry, that sounds like a statement to end the podcast, but I just feel like I cannot get across enough the balancing act they did with all of these crazy emotions, this wide spectrum of emotions. So well done.
Yeah, I mean, at no point are they like, I mean, I'm not supposed to be able to do that. It's like, oh, how did that happen, right? No, they're just in the moment. They're present, right? And of course he's gonna spin a motorcycle around, right? Why wouldn't he in this scenario? You know?
Yeah,
And so we
when you see a
believe him.
motorcycle. Yeah. Guys, if you go outside your house and you believe you can spin a motorcycle, you can do it. And if you don't, you just are a coward and you have self-doubt and you hate yourself. That's the story Jeffrey is telling you.
Here's the thing, though. This movie, it made me believe I could do things like that.
It did. Isn't that the crazy? It made me believe I could go outside and jump off a 20-foot roof and just kind of barrel roll and be fine. Like I'm invincible. I didn't have chest hair before this movie, and now I do.
Yeah.
I am not gay. I loved watching the shirtless men be super jacked and sweaty. It was great. And the biggest crime of this whole movie is Raju, however you pronounce his name. He is the one in the military, the one with the mysterious backstory. He has a glorious mustache, so attractive. Into the third act, he gets rid of it, and it's so sad because his mustache makes him so hot, and then he becomes like wild bear man at the end of the movie. But that's getting ahead of myself.
Absolutely. I mean, like that's I watched this with my girlfriend, and she's really big into mustaches, right? She's one of those, strange individuals that like thinks that they're attractive. Hey, I mean, I'm among them, right? But he's just a very attractive man, and I think his third act transformation kind of does him a disservice.
Yeah, it makes sense because it makes sense with his character development, which is cool to see a physical character development. Yeah, but as far as like me wanting to look at a hot guy, doesn't make sense at all. Boo. No. All that being said, I think that kind of leads us up to the final point in the third act and what is the rest of this movie it's about. Bahim and Raju's friendship. They become brothers. They become one. They eat together. They just kind of run around the mountainside and terrorize boys who are like taking care of goats for no reason. They do everything together is the point. Did that friendship seem silly, seeing how it started? Them just looking off at each other like a million feet away and be like telepathic. And then they go on like a montage of them singing and dancing and becoming best friends. And also, during this montage of them becoming best friends, running around the mountainside, doing fun things together, we see Bahim in the montage is desperately trying to figure out how to find Malay, the girl. And we see Raju is desperately trying to find Bahim, even though he doesn't know it's Bahim. So we get in this montage, song being sung, kind of narration, a very clear divide. In storytelling, we're really taught show, don't tell, do things with subtext. Don't throw into someone's face. I will say this movie does some really cool subtext things, but some things are just so on the nose. There's this shot of them like walking and they're on either side of this like coiled barbed wire and the camera's going between the barbed wire and the music is literally like, oh, two friends. Are they destined to be friends? Are they destined to like be rivals? So all to be said, their friendship is like, I don't know if I want to say rushed, but their friendship is really just lightning in a bottle. Boom, it happens. And it's also very on the nose. Did that hurt their friendship for you? Like their chemistry? Or no?
I remembered thinking in the moment that it was a bit odd that it was happening so quickly and that we were seeing it through montage rather than seeing us or seeing them, build that bond slowly but surely. But by the end of the movie, I believe thoroughly in that friendship. And so I think that whatever they did, it worked. But I think that montage, perhaps more than the action scenes, I'd felt was just a bit goofy, right? It's like them giving each other piggyback rides and.
No, it comes back like narratively in the end. It's important.
No, it was good.
Is the feet, Raju is the arms. They are one.
And it works because like when that moment came in that last act where they're fighting in conjunction with each other, right? It's like, oh, the piggyback, it's returned, And it was
it was so funny.
This is a triumphant moment. And I think that's what made it all the better is that it was calling back to what was, in my mind, kind of a goofy moment.
Yeah. I won't disagree that scene in particular was probably the goofiest, but I just thought there isn't enough movies that do brotherly relationships, that do friendships really well. And I love seeing them become friends. And also Bahim, he's very sweet. He's very innocent. He wants to befriend everyone. He has a good nature to him. He's just so lovable that I feel like he really sells the relationship. But also Raju sells it because, they're foils to each other. Raju has this tragic backstory that we don't know about that makes him very jaded and distrustful. And Bahim is from nature. He is one with his clan and his people and nature, and he's very loving and wants to accept everyone. And so, like the song goes, they're unlikely friends that become they become friends, but will they be end foes? So I just really like they work so well as a foil, and I just love watching them on screen just be friends. And I feel like I could watch like an hour of them just running around Delhi being friends together, and it's so precious. And you're right, like you said, when we get later on with the betrayal and the torture scene, I feel like whether you like that setup or not, the friendship is there because when that stuff happens in the second and third act, you really feel it in your gut. And I thought they did a good job with it.
No, I agree, and I think that they are great foils to one another, right? Bahim is very innocent and passionate, right? And if he sees injustice happening, he wants to intervene, right? Whereas Raju is more of the pragmatist. You can't have an omelet if you don't break a few eggs. He demonstrates this in throwing the nails onto the road so that Bahim's lady love can hang out with them, right? He's willing to do that. It wasn't even a thought that crossed Bahim's mind, though. But I think it's so important that you have both elements when, I guess, conspiring to revolt, both the head and the heart.
Oh, that's I never thought about that. Because, yeah, the movie, another thing I love about this movie, it's just straight up propaganda. It is like, without a doubt, just basically like, hey, the British Empire, they sucked. We're awesome. We kicked them out. But the point, I think that is an interesting idea of like a revolution. You need the brawn and the brain to literally revolt, but you need the spirit to also rise up against people. Which 100%, they're just like, again, they're a great foil to each other. I also like that they rub off on each other. By the end of the movie, which we'll get into later, but Raju appreciates Bahim's his good nature and how just being a good person can stir a revolution. It's not just about brawn and brain. And I think also Bahim realizes he can't be so open to be so emotional all the time. And he has to be not cold and calculated, but he has to use some of his brain as well. So I like that they rub off in each other by the end of the movie. So you have a more balanced, unified revolution.
It was a great moment when Raju finally realizes that, oh, I've been so focused on the material conditions of a revolutionary victory that I haven't been focusing on the real weapon that we have at our disposal, which is passion, which is heart, which is abiding by our convictions, right? I've been trying to arm the revolutionaries by sacrificing my convictions, but the true weapons are within us. And so that was a great moment.
It's such a great story thread when he realizes that. I love it. But that's going into the second act, so I guess I'll just mosey on right along. So here's the synopsis for the second act, y'all. As the mission intensifies, Bahim plans an all-out assault on the British compound, using a jungle full of wild animals during his daring attack. Mali is nearly freed, but Raju stops Beam, revealing his identity as a British officer. The betrayal devastates Bahim, who is captured and tortured. However, we soon learn Raju's full story. He's not a loyalist, but a revolutionary who infiltrated the British ranks to gain access to their armory and eventually lead an armed rebellion. Haunted by the memory of his father's execution, Raju has carried this burden in secret. Now he's forced to choose loyalty to his long-term revolutionary mission or the new friendship he never expected. Raju chooses Bahim, attempting a failed rescue, and ends up imprisoned himself. This is where the movie really kicks off. I would say, again, the first, second, and third act are literally an hour in length each, so add 25 minutes to each act compared to every movie. But the first bit of the movie is really just setting up these two opposing foes, unlikely friends, and their motivations, but all comes to head in this second act. Jeffrey, earlier how I said, basically every single scene is a set piece. What was your favorite set piece up to this, into the second act? So let's not go into the third act yet, but what was kind of your favorite scene or set piece so far?
I think it was the bridge. I think it was. That's the one that stuck with me the most. The one that was so over the top, so ridiculous, but also it's the emotional crux of the film is this budding relationship. And now we're at this point where it's unraveling, right? And Bahim doesn't understand why it's unraveling or how his friend could betray him in these circumstances. But of course, Raju understands, and it's eating away at him. And, that the weight of that interaction would be lost if it weren't for that demonstration of these people are connected, right? These people are destined to be brothers.
So when everything kind of falls apart and Raju reveals that he is a British officer and he will not let Bahim save Mali, because basically Raju's whole thing is he needs to get promoted to a certain rank to be allowed into the armory. And his whole thing is I will sacrifice anything and everything, even if it means betraying my people who I'm trying to save, if I can get into the armory and then give the guns to the revolutionary. So Bahim, who he loves at this point, his brother, he has to fight. Did that fight land emotionally for you? It was great choreography. It was so, yeah, you don't often get to see, there's some goofy bits where they're literally a whole thing they do is Bahim is water and Raju is fire. And they have a literal moment where Bahim is using hoses with water coming out and Raju is manning fireworks. So there's some funny, goofy moments, but there's some also really grounded hand-to-hand combat where they're literally just throwing each other around and some really cool ninjutsu type looking fighting. So there's some great choreography. But the question is, does the emotional impact of their friendship falling apart and the betrayal and them literally with every blow, you feel the emotions of you are my friend. Why are you standing? Why are you opposing me? Bahim feels that. And Raju feels, I do not want to do this, but I must. And you can feel him hardening his heart. You feel him deciding this is what is best. Did in that choreographed fight scene, the emotions come through for you, Jeffrey?
They 100% did, right? Bahim is pleading with Raju and almost letting Raju beat the shit out of him. But that changes when he loses the key in the sewage grate. And now something that he cares about more than Raju is at stake. And it's because of Raju that he lost that key. And that was the key to Mali. And so all of a sudden his attacks intensify. And now he's motivated by anger, right? It's no more confusion. It's not sadness at this betrayal, it's anger, and that's communicated in the fight choreography. But I also don't know if we as an audience know that Raju is doing this to arm revolutionaries. Yeah.
We don't at this point. No. We know something's going on. I assume by this point you can make the assumption he's not evil, just working for the British Empire, but you do not know his backstory.
Yeah. It might just be that he's misled into thinking that the British are the good guys, right? And he's just loyal to his superiors. But we can tell that it's weighing on him, that he does not want to do this.
It felt a little bit, I know different narratives, but it felt ever so slightly emotionally kind of the fight between Anakin and Obi-Wan. Ever
Yeah.
so slightly, kind of just we were brothers and they have to fight. I really like that, but I also loved the desperation of Bahim. He is going through hell. Basically, he attacks the governor. I don't know if this was a good idea, but he decides to attack during a huge celebration. So there's hundreds of people around, a bunch of guards, and how he attacks is he rams this giant truck into the garden and lets out a bunch of wild animals. And so all the officers are being eaten and mauled by deers and lions. It's hilarious. But Bahim has to struggle from like the courtyard to the garden, on top of the building, all the way into the back of this mansion. And he just every single moment is struggling to get there. And I loved seeing that. Like it's so fun watching someone fight tooth and nail to get somewhere and only to be stopped at the last moment. So good.
I agree, man. And that scene where he's holding on to the thread that Bahim gave Raju, this holy thread, to protect him as Raju was dying, right, from this viper's venom. It's now the instrument through which Bahim is being like dangled like over the ledge and at Raju's mercy. And it's such a potent betrayal.
Yeah. It almost made my holy moment. Just to paint the scene, Bahim has made it almost to Mahali, the girl. He has fought tooth and nail, and basically he's on top of this like roof of the mansion, and below him in the back garden is the evil governor and his wife and Mali, and he jumps off the roof to go get them. And Raj takes this holy thread that Jeffrey's talking about and wraps it around his wrist, and so Bahim is just dangling in midair, and Bahim realizes he's lost. The guards come over and they point guns at him, and he just cries and lifts himself with one hand and just punches Raju in the face like 3 or 4 times. Every time a guttural scream, and Raju is just sitting there taking it because he hates himself in this moment. And Bahim is so angry. And just that altercation of trading blows while screaming, Bahim knowing he is lost, Raju knowing he has just betrayed his best friend. It was so good. That storytelling and how they're able, the acting, just chef's kiss was great. What I feel like in this act, before all this actually went down, I would be foolish to not talk about the famous Natu scene. So Bahim, there's a little bit of a love interest in the background. It's really not that important. But I think it's like the niece of the governor, of the evil British governor, is there. And Bahim falls in love with her, and they are cute, blah, blah, blah. I love they never can understand each other. The whole movie, they don't speak each other's languages. So they literally just talk to each other. And the other one's like, I don't know what you're saying. But long story short, Ginny is the name of the girl. She invites Bahim to a wedding, and he shows up. And there's this racist white guy that's like, you can't dance. You're brown. Get out of here. And then Raju shows up, and he's side winging it. Wingman, that's what it's called. And he starts playing the drums. And then they do this whole dance choreography to Natu, which is like a dance style, or the name of the song. I'm not sure. What did you think of that, Jeffrey?
Man, it felt so unrelated to anything else that I forgot about it.
100% agree. Yeah.
I think it was very fun, and it did further strengthen Beams and Raju's relationship in the minds of the audience. It was a music video.
It was very much a music video.
It was a music, and that's what I have come to notice about both PK and RRR is the music. When it appears, it feels more akin to a music video than, a scene that you'd see in a traditional like Western musical. It seems somewhat separate from the events of everything else, though related. And that's not bad at all. It's just so interesting.
Yeah. Well, with this song in particular winning Best Original Song at the Oscars, Was it your favorite song, or what was, this would be a good time to ask, what was your favorite song in the movie?
Man, there's that really percussive, um, I can't imitate it. It's like, you know?
Yeah, no, the funny thing is, I want to try and recreate it as well, but I don't know how to. But I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah. I just thought that was so cool whenever it showed up. And it's an example of the motifs that they bring back and use so effectively in the movie. But there's that. And then also at the very end, I think it was the most explicitly propaganda song when they're celebrating the different clans and castes in India. It made me really curious to learn more about each and every one of those clans mentioned.
In all fairness, as far as like what won most original song, the one that Jeffrey and I liked the most was more soundtrack. I don't think it was an actual original song. It was more for the soundtrack. So I don't think that one could have won original song anyway. So I understand why Naatu Naatu was picked. But much like Jeffrey said, it was a nice. It was also, again, it was another. Even though it wasn't action, it was still a set piece. My goodness. But it was a nice reprieve from all of the fighting. But it did, out of all the scenes, probably feel the most misplaced. So it is one I think about the least, and so therefore I do think about Naatu Naatu the song the least amount when I think about RRR. It's just not necessarily important to me, but it's still fun. It's an amazing scene. Again, if you don't want to watch the movie because you're a fool, just look up wedding scene from RRR. It's awesome. It's a 4 or 5 minute long music video. So just go watch that. There's a lot that happens in the second act. Is there anything else you want to talk about before I go into the third act? Any scenes that I glossed over that you wanted to talk about?
It was quite an effective and emotionally impactful moment when Raju is on his deathbed from the viper bite, and Mahim makes his confession to Raju, saying, I love you, like my friend, but I must attend to this very important thing. And then once I take care of this, I will return to you and attend to you. And then Raju is thinking to himself, well, this is precisely the thing that I must stop at all costs. Yeah, it's painful.
Yeah. Speaking of painful, actually, I thought this was in the third act. This is at the end of kind of the second act, and we cannot move on before we discuss the torture scene. Torture is not the correct word, but basically, Bahim is captured. The British government governor is pissed off, and he's like, we're going to make sure this never happens again, and we're going to torture Bahim in front of all the people, and we're going to make you, Raju, do it because you're the guy that captured him. So he's paraded out kind of on this gallows looking platform, and there's a bunch of, Indians all around him. And then the governor and his wife are up top watching it. And they're basically like, you will not stop whipping and beating him until he kneels and admits that he was wrong and he was a small little man who could never take on the great British Empire. And Raju, obviously not wanting to do this, kind of like, they're not on good terms. He's not trying to be like, don't worry, Bahim, I'm going to get you out of here. But he still feels bad. So Raju is trying to be like, hey, you know what, Bahim, just give it up, kneel, admit it. You won't have to be beaten. But Bahim doesn't. And so we go through this long scene of Raju beating him with a whip. And then the governor's wife gives him a serrated whip. And then they pull him up, hanging him by the wrists with a huge cinder block weighing on his ankles. So they just go through a bunch of different torture methods. But what makes this scene so beautiful is Bahim starts to sing a song through it. And basically he's rallying the people around him, saying like, if you can stand for this injustice, the injustice I am seeing, the injustice you people are seeing, what we are going through, you cannot call yourself the people of the forest. You cannot call yourself, your tribal name. You cannot call yourself an Indian because we do not stand by these horrible injustices. So he sings this really beautiful song during this horrible moment. And then at the end of it, when he finally collapses and falls unconscious, and his song stops, the people around him riot. And this is the moment that you were talking about, Jeffrey, earlier, where Raju realizes, I was trying to arm everyone with a weapon when Bahim armed everyone with his voice. And it was just so poetic and great. What did you think of the scene?
No, I mean, honestly, that's a contender for the holy moment.
100%, yeah.
Because on the one hand, there is logic to what Raju is doing, right? In order to stage a rebellion, you're going to have weapons. Physical weapons. But in witnessing what Bahim is willing to do, what he's willing to sacrifice, he realizes, there are certain things that I can't do, right? There are certain convictions that I must abide by in order to keep this rebellion, this revolution pure. It's not worth it if I am sacrificing my fellow man, my fellow citizen. And then here he also learns that, again, the most potent weapon that you have access to is within you, right? It's the human spirit, the indomitable human spirit, as it were. I know a lot of people were making memes about that a while ago. I'm not sure if you ever caught on to that, but
I
um,
didn't. I'm not cool enough to know about that meme.
but that's essentially like what it is. Um, and how you light that fire within the human spirit is by showing that you are a man of conviction, a person of principle, and showing people that there are certain things that you do not abide by.
Yeah, no, I mean, I put really well. I think it was just so masterfully done. Again, just walking that tightrope of overacting and kind of gimmicky storytelling through the song, but it just worked. It just worked, and I couldn't tell you why. I think it takes such a skilled director to mix all these things into a pot and make them work. A more skilled director and writer than I will probably ever be, and props to him. But yeah, that's kind of how the third act almost ends. So basically, he gets beaten, and then they assign him to be hung. But Raju comes to his wits and decides, I cannot let this happen, and he helps Bahim and Mali escape, but he ends up being taken captive instead. And that leads us into the third act. Bahim learns the truth from Sita, Raju's fiancée, and stages a daring rescue to free Raju. Now fully aligned in purpose and brotherhood, they rise together against the British in an explosive climax, stealing weapons, rallying the oppressed, and unleashing a symbolic and literal firestorm. Raju dons his father's revolutionary garb. Bahim becomes the embodiment of nature's revenge. Together, they storm the British stronghold with mystic energy, defeating the governor and freeing Mali. The film ends with a musical celebration of Indian revolution and unity, symbolizing how the shared sacrifices paves the way for India's eventual freedom. Wow, this brings us into the end. This brings us to the big climactic mystical powers. I would say up until now, everything's been over the top. Everything's been crazy, but vaguely believable. I say go into the third act. Once they unify, once they become one, they really do unlock a little bit of god powers, I will say, in the best way.
For sure, for sure. This enters full blown anime territory.
I love that. It's probably the closest thing I've ever seen to live action anime, because most live action anime feels really goofy. But once again, somehow they pull it off. But I thought that prison scene was great. So, I have to talk about probably my favorite scene in the entire movie. Raju is captured. He's in prison for betraying the British government. The governor is pissed off, and he's walking to the prison with his little British secretary guy, and the secretary guy is like, we're giving him daily beatings and we're starving him. He's gonna be like a fifth of the weight he used to be. He's just laying on his deathbed waiting to be hung. And then the motif starts up. The tiger growling, the drums just pounding in your heart, the manliness of it all. And they arrive at his cage, and there he is doing pull-ups. And he's just grown out his hair, his mustache has grown out into a beard, and he's so freaking badass. Not caring, he's just doing pull-ups, looking out his cell window, looking at the British embassy with vengeful hatefulness in his eyes. But it was great. What did you think about the whole final altercation, the big final set piece of Raju and Bahim breaking out of jail, taking on the Secret Servicemen, killing all of them, and then blowing up the British embassy, basically?
I mean, that is a revenge fantasy at its finest. Right? Because I feel like you're used to in Western films, the protagonists going, I can't do this. I can't stoop to your level. No. They just end him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was great. They did a great job with the governor. He wasn't in a ton of the movie, but they made him vile and evil.
Yeah.
And it was also weird in a really interesting way. The movie was just all Indian people, besides like three people: the governor, the governor's wife, and then the niece, Jenny, the love interest. They just stuck out like a thumb. So I do wonder, when a minority culture or race like Asians watch an American movie and then there's like one Asian, if that's how they feel. Because it was just so odd being like all Indian and then the three evil white people. So like even physically, they stood out because they were the only white people around, and they just almost looked grotesque. Uh, and they did a really good job of when they killed him at the end. I was all for it. I was like, yeah, get
Yeah.
him, shoot him
Yeah.
in the face.
I'll tell you a moment that I really enjoyed. It's when the British secretary man is hiding behind a tree, right?
Yeah,
The forest is on fire, right? All of a sudden he turns and beams right in front of him. The camera lowers and we see that he has been stabbed through with a spear. And we know that it was the secretary's act of turning that did it to him.
yeah. It must be a sharp spear if you could just turn and then the spear is all the way through you. Not like a little. It's not like sticking into his stomach. It was like 2 feet on the other side of him, sticking through him. It was so good. I love that final fight scene. It's so just goofy. And again, the best way. It's the scene where Bahim just picks up a motorcycle, starts twirling it around and beating people with it. Super funny. Oh, also, a little bit of a fun fact. So there's just so many small symbolisms throughout the movie of like they're brothers who are the same, but yet they're opposite. And one of the ways they show that is multiple scenes. You'll have Bahim in a motorcycle and you'll have Raju on a horse. It feels very, I don't know if you thought this, Jeffrey, it feels the opposite. Bahim, the loving, friendly nature guy, he should be on the horse. Raju, the calculating brain, he should be on the metal machine.
Yeah,
You want to know why it's that way?
Why?
Raju, the actor, is an equestrian since a kid, so he grew up on horses.
Whoa, I didn't realize that. But I had that
Yeah,
exact thought that you had about, oh, like Beam's the one on the motorcycle. That's very interesting.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think the reason they did it was probably practicality. They probably were like, Raju was really the actor Ram is just good on horses. Let's put him on a horse. But yeah, it is. It's great. It just goes to show how ingrained they did a good job of like ingraining the characters' morals and stances. That putting one on a horse and one on a motorcycle feels inherently wrong to the audience. I think they did like this. Just goes to show how good of a job they did with the characters.
Yeah, I agree. Like the first few times I saw him on that motorcycle, it felt out of place. But then as we saw more on their respective steeds, as it were, it felt right. It's like, yeah, Beam, you get on that motorcycle, right?
Yeah.
That's
It, I,
yours.
yeah, there's no way that Beam could twirl a horse around. He needs to be able to twirl a motorcycle
That would be
around.
inhumane.
I mean, that's fair. I mean, it's great. When the movie opens up with the opening title credits, there's this thing where it's like, no animals were harmed in the uses of this movie. They were all CGI, which sometimes you can tell. Oh, I think the horses were real, but like the wolves and the leopards and the lions and tigers were CGI. I want to quickly talk. I know this episode has been a lot of just like describing the scenes, but guys, speaking of not hurting animals, I'm gonna beat this horse again. The movie is so epic that the podcast really we only have time to describe the scenes. But let me ask you this more general question. What did you think of the cinematography? And what was your favorite probably shot?
I think that the cinematography is surprisingly good, right? I loved how they would frame the shot through like various things such as like barbed wire and the camera movements as well. I indicated as much with the scene with the secretary and Beam and him being stabbed through is a simple pan down. I think I'm using the right term there to show that he was plunged through. I thought it was very effective, and I also liked that it was precise, right? We're not using that shaky cam to make the action less visible. These action scenes were well choreographed, and the cinematography showed them off.
That's a great point. It was so smooth. Like the camera movement was choreographed and deliberate, and the fighting choreograph was trained and deliberate, and it was really great. Two shots that come to mind really quick. The wide, there's just this really, I can't even describe it, guys. You just gotta watch it. There's this great wide of that big set piece of the first act where the train and they save the boy and the explosion. There's this huge wide of the train going by, the ocean and the shadow of the train over the ocean. Just was really beautiful. But then another shot I love, just like visual irony. At the very end of the movie, they shoot the governor, and his blood splatters over this wall, and on the wall there's this imprint of what is the saying, like the sun will never set on the British Empire,
Yeah.
and then you have his blood splattering and slowly dripping down, and it's just a gorgeous shot and such a fun literal way to tell a story.
Yeah.
That shot really stuck out to me. It was great. I could talk about this movie for hours, literally just describing every single scene. I'm sure when I go back to edit this podcast, I'll be like, no, I didn't talk about this scene or that scene. I mean, we didn't even talk about his whole backstory. That was like a whole act in itself. But at the end of the day, guys, phenomenal movie. You got to go watch it. Jeffrey, what was your holy? I'm really curious. This one, I usually I feel like I kind of know going in what direction you're leaning, but I actually have no idea what you're about to say. Like, I don't know if you're going to talk about a general theme. This is a movie. If you're going to pick a moment, this movie has a billion of them. So I just don't know. So enlighten us.
It's so funny that I mean, it makes sense that you couldn't guess where I'd go with my holy moment, because this holy moment happens in the backstory of Raju that we have not discussed at all.
Well, you know what, Jeffrey? You host for 10 seconds. Tell us the backstory and give us your holy moment.
Yeah, so Raju, he's a kid, right? And his father's leading a group of revolutionaries in the army, or in the forest, and he's teaching them how to fire a weapon. And we find out that Raju himself has a great aptitude, a great affinity for shooting. One day, the British Empire, they find out where this little enclave is, and they invade, right? And they're just gunning people down left and right. And him and his father stay behind to fend off the British. But in the confusion and the chaos of all these things, his brother is running through the village, and a British soldier shoots him. And then his mother runs to his fallen brother, screaming, crying, and then she's shot too. And he's witnessed both of these family members fall at the hands of the British Empire, and he's distraught, understandably so. Like, he's crying, he's screaming, and as he is mourning, as he's grieving, his father simply says, "Load, aim, shoot." And this is something that was said prior when he was training all the soldiers how to shoot their weapons, right? Just load, aim, shoot. We've heard it enough times that it's kind of lost its meaning until this moment. And now he's telling his son, now is the moment. You can't afford to mourn. You can't afford to grieve. Right now, the time is to act. Right now, the time is to kill, right? Let go of all of your passion and focus solely on the enemy in front of us.
Yeah, and something that just a little note about that scene that I really loved is when his father hands him the gun. There's such a heavy moment on a child taking a gun. They really respect that moment and they don't gloss over it. The father hands the gun out and the son looks at it. It's like he wanted the gun his whole life because his father's been training him to be like this warrior. But now it's the real moment. It's a real gun. It's no longer a toy gun. And the gravity shifts, the weight shifts, and then there's this really creepy, unsettling, like tiger growl starts happening. And then he takes the gun and the growl gets louder, kind of symbolizing, not that Raju ever becomes a bad guy or evil, but it is the start of kind of his heart being hardened, that Bahim has to come along and softened. And I thought that was just a beautiful moment. That's a great holy moment, Jeffrey. For me, maybe this is a little bit of a cop-out, but I don't care. This really is one of my favorite movies of all time. And I've said it multiple times on this episode already. There are a billion moments I could choose from that we've talked about today. But for me, just the best part of this movie was the balancing act the director did between over-the-top action, goofy music videos, heart-wrenching scenes, crazy choreography. It was walking that tightrope, mixing all those elements into a stew, and still getting something so breathtaking and so grounded that I almost cry every time at certain moments in the movie. And I burst out laughing at every single specific scenes and every single time I watch it. And to be able to get that whiplash of emotion in a good way, I think is incredibly, incredibly rare, and takes an incredible writer and incredible director to know when to pull his punches and when to land them hard. So that's my holy moment. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for just taking an hour and a half of your day to listen to us talk about RRR, a movie that I cannot stress enough. If you have not noticed, please go watch. You will thank me later. But speaking of going and watching, we need to figure out what movie we're watching next week. So, Jeffrey, I believe you have a wheel that needs to be spun. All right, ladies and gentlemen, since Jeffrey's internet sucks and I don't have access to his spinning wheel, we're going to do a classic flipping of a coin. Alrighty, so no spinning this week, guys. Flipping of a coin. Here I go. And it is 100% heads. So that means, what did you say for heads? Die Hard. Perfect. Beautiful. And guys, Die Hard will be our 20th episode. So tune in. Next week, we'll be watching Die Hard. That's super exciting. Go watch Die Hard for our 20th episode. And thank you so much for joining us. And remember to rise, roar, and revolt. And have yourself a beautiful day. And go look at some sweaty men doing some beautiful revolutionary work. Until next week, bye-bye.